March 30th, 1998, Florida State Prison, 7 a.m. in the morning. A 54-year-old woman named Judy Buenoano woke up knowing she had less than 12 hours to live. But here's the thing. She wasn't scared. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She ordered her last meal like she was at a restaurant. That morning, something historic was about to happen in Florida. For the first time in years, since 1848, the state was preparing to execute a woman. And this wasn't just any execution. Judy would become the first woman strapped into an electric chair in America since 1976. But what did this grandmother do to deserve such a fate? The answer is scary. Judy Buenoano didn't kill once in a moment of rage. She killed again and again and again. Her husband dead, her own son dead, her boyfriend's dead, and every single time someone close to Judy died, she walked away with one thing: cold, hard cash from life insurance policies. They called her the Black Widow, a woman who turned love into a death sentence and murder into a profitable business. This woman did a lot. I mean, most serial killers could even fear her. We're going to tell you all about her crime and her execution. Before we dive into this dark story, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support keeps us bringing you these true crime stories. This is the final sentence. Stay with us. But here's what nobody expected. The trail of bodies that led Judy to the electric chair started with a vitamin pill and a man who refused to die. Before Judy Buenoano became a killer, she was just a little girl named Judias. She was born on April 4, 1943, in Quanah, Texas. She was the third of 4 children in what should have been a normal family. But normal ended quickly. When Judias was only 4 years old, her mother died. Imagine being that young and losing the one person who loved you most. Judias and her younger brother Robert were sent to live with their grandparents. For a while, things were okay. Then their father remarried. His new wife already had 2 sons of her own. The grandparents sent Judias and Robert to Roswell, New Mexico, to live with their father and this new stepfamily. That's when the nightmare began. Judias's father and stepmother didn't treat her like a daughter. They treated her like a slave. They starved her, giving her barely enough food to survive. They forced her to do all the housework while her stepbrothers did nothing. The physical abuse was constant. The emotional torture was even worse. Day after day, year after year, a little girl was being broken down piece by piece. Most abused children suffer in silence. But Judias had a breaking point. At 14 years old, she snapped. One day, she grabbed a pot of hot grease from the stove and attacked her father, her stepmother, and both stepbrothers. The burns were serious. The courts didn't see a desperate child fighting back. They saw a violent criminal. Judias was sentenced to 2 months in prison. She was 14 years old and already had a criminal record. When she got out, Judias made a choice. She could go back to that house of horrors, or she could go to reform school. She chose reform school. That tells you everything about how bad her home life was. Prison was better than living with her own family. In 1960, Judias graduated from reform school. She trained as a nursing assistant, learning how to care for sick people. The irony is painful when you think about what she'd later do with that medical knowledge. The next year, 1961, she gave birth to a son named Michael. She wasn't married. In the 1960s, having a baby without being married brought shame and judgment. Judias resented that baby from day one. The abuse didn't create a killer, but it created someone who learned early that people will hurt you. That family can't be trusted, and that survival means looking out for yourself no matter who gets hurt. But Judy had a secret business that had nothing to do with haircuts and manicures. She was a serial killer who turned murder into profit. Her method was simple but deadly. First, She'd make a man fall in love with her. Then she'd secretly take out life insurance policies on him. Next came the poison. Small doses mixed into food or hidden in vitamin pills. Finally, she'd watch him die slowly. Then collect the insurance money. Love, poison, cash, repeat. Judias Welty was about to become someone new. She met a man named James Goodyear, a sergeant in the United States Air Force. He was a good man with a steady job and a future. He wore his uniform with pride and served his country with honor. James fell in love with Judias and they got married. She became Judias Goodyear, a military wife with a respectable last name. From the outside, it looked like she was finally building a normal life. A husband with a career, a home, stability, everything her childhood had lacked. But something dark was growing inside Judy, something that saw James not as a husband, but as an opportunity. September 16, 1971, Orlando, Florida. James Goodyear came home from work feeling sick. Over the next hours, he got worse, much worse. By the end of the day, he was dead. The doctors looked at his symptoms and made their diagnosis natural causes. Maybe a heart attack, maybe an illness they couldn't identify. In 1971, medical testing wasn't as advanced as it is today. When a seemingly healthy man suddenly died, doctors did their best to find an answer. Sometimes they got it wrong. No one suspected Judy. Why would they? She was the grieving widow. She cried at the funeral. She accepted sympathy from friends and family. She played her part perfectly. Then came the life insurance check. James had been insured, and as his widow, Judy collected every penny. She had just gotten away with murder, and she'd made money doing it. This was the moment that set everything in motion. Judy had discovered something powerful, a pattern that worked. The formula was simple. Get close to someone. Make them trust you. Take out life insurance policies on them without raising suspicion. Then slowly poison them until they die. Watch the doctors rule it as natural causes. Collect the insurance money. Move on. It was the perfect crime. Or at least, Judy thought it was. Here's the terrifying part. James Goodyear's death wouldn't be connected to Judy for more than a decade. By the time investigators finally figured out what she'd done, she had already killed again and again. A normal widow would grieve. She'd take time to heal. She'd struggle with the loss of her husband. But Judy, there were no real tears, no genuine grief, just cold planning about who would be next. James Goodyear was a sergeant who served his country. He deserved to grow old, maybe retire with a pension, watch his family grow. Instead, he became victim number one in a killing spree that would span years. His death certificate said, natural causes, but the truth was far more sinister. James Goodyear had been murdered by the woman who promised to love him until death do them part. Judy just made sure that death came a lot sooner than anyone expected. The Black Widow had claimed her first victim, and she was just getting started. 2 years had passed since James Goodyear's death. Judy packed up her life and moved to Trinidad, Colorado. New state, new start, new victim. His name was Bobby Joe Morris. He was a local resident, just a regular guy looking for companionship. When Judy showed interest in him, he thought he'd gotten lucky. He had no idea he'd just signed his own death warrant. Judy moved in with Bobby Joe. They became a couple. To his friends and family, they seemed happy together. But behind closed doors, Judy was already planning. Another man in her life meant another opportunity, another insurance policy, another payday. Bobby Joe didn't know that the woman sharing his bed was also planning his funeral. January 1978. Bobby Joe Morris started feeling sick, weak, nauseous, confused. His symptoms got worse and worse until finally he died. The doctors did their examination and listed the cause of death. They suspected poison, but in 1978, testing wasn't sophisticated enough to prove it definitely. Once again, Judy played the devastated girlfriend. Once again, she collected the insurance money. Once again, she got away with murder. 2 men dead, 2 insurance checks cashed, and still nobody was connecting the dots. But later that same year, Judy did something that shows just how twisted her mind really was. She went to court and legally changed her name. She was no longer Judias Goodyear or Judias Welty. She became Judias Buenoano. Now, if you speak Spanish, you might recognize that word. Buenoano is corrupted Spanish. It's a mangled version of Buenoano, which means good year, just like her first married name, Goodyear. Think about that for a second. Judy changed her name to honor the man she murdered. It was either a twisted tribute to her first victim or a dark inside joke that only she understood. Maybe it was her way of celebrating what she'd done, a secret reminder of the crime she'd gotten away with. This wasn't a woman running from her past. This was a woman celebrating it. She was so confident, so sure she'd never get caught, that she literally renamed herself after her first murder. 2 men were dead, 2 families were grieving, and Judy was walking around with a name that mocked them all. Her confidence was growing with each successful kill. The fear of getting caught was fading. She'd done it twice now, and both times the system had failed to stop her. The doctors believed her. The insurance companies paid her. The police never even investigated. Judy Buenoano was getting away with murder, and she knew it. But she wasn't satisfied yet. The insurance money was good, but there was someone else in her life who could make her even richer. Someone who trusted her completely, someone who would never suspect what was coming. Her own son. Michael Buenoano was born in 1961, the son Judy never wanted. He was born without her being married, and in the early 1960s, that brought shame. Every time Judy looked at Michael, she saw a mistake she couldn't erase, a reminder of a moment that had marked her as an unwed mother. But as Michael grew up, Judy started seeing him differently. Not as a son, as an opportunity, as money. Around 1980, when Michael was 19 years old, something strange started happening. He began getting sick, really sick. His arms started feeling weak. Then his legs. The weakness turned into partial paralysis, a condition called paraplegia. Soon, Michael couldn't walk without heavy metal braces on his arms and legs. Doctors ran tests. They were completely baffled. Here was a young man, barely out of his teens, and his body was shutting down. They couldn't figure out why. They tried different treatments, but nothing worked. Michael just kept getting worse. What those doctors didn't know was that Judy was poisoning her own son. Small doses of arsenic given over months, slowly destroying his nervous system, slowly making him weaker and more helpless. She was disabling him on purpose, and she had a reason. May 13th, 1980, Milton, Florida. It was a beautiful day for a canoe trip. Judy told Michael they should spend some quality mother-son time together on the water. Michael, who loved his mother despite everything, agreed. They got into the canoe. Michael was wearing his heavy arm and leg braces, the metal supports he needed just to move. Judy made sure he didn't put on a life jacket. She said he didn't need one. They paddled out into the water. Then suddenly the canoe tipped over. Both of them went into the water. Judy, who could swim just fine, made it to safety. But Michael, weighed down by those heavy metal braces, unable to move his arms and legs properly, he sank like a stone. He couldn't swim. He couldn't fight. He couldn't save himself. And his mother just watched him drown. When the authorities arrived, Judy was playing the role of her life. She was the devastated mother who had just lost her son in a tragic accident. She cried. She sobbed. She told them how the canoe had just tipped over, how she'd tried to save him but couldn't reach him in time. Everyone believed her. It was ruled an accidental drowning case closed. Then came the insurance check. Judy had taken out policies on Michael's life. When he died, she collected thousands of dollars. And what did she do with that blood money? She opened a beauty salon in Gulf Breeze, Florida. Think about that. Judy was cutting hair, doing manicures, chatting with customers about their lives. All in a business built with money she got from murdering her own son. This wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was cold, calculated, premeditated murder. Judy had planned every step. The poisoning, the braces, the canoe trip, the missing life jacket. She'd thought it all through. Most killers have limits. Most serial killers target strangers or acquaintances. But Judy had crossed a line that even hardened criminals rarely cross. She had murdered her own child, the boy she had given birth to, the son who trusted her completely. The Black Widow had just committed her most heartless crime yet, and she was still getting away with it. Judy Buenoano was in a new relationship. His name was John Gentry, and he owned a wallpaper business in Pensacola, Florida. He was a nice guy with a successful business and money in the bank. He thought he'd found a good woman to share his life with. To Judy, he was just another mark, another insurance policy waiting to be cashed. The setup began in November 1982. Judy started telling her friends something strange. She said John had a terminal illness. She said he was dying. The problem? John wasn't sick at all. He felt fine. But Judy was laying the groundwork, planting seeds in people's minds. When John died, everyone would think, "Oh, we knew he was sick." Poor Judy. Then came the vitamin pills. Judy told John she'd bought special vitamins to keep him healthy. She was so caring, so concerned about his well-being. John trusted his girlfriend completely, so he took the pills every day. Soon, John started feeling terrible, weak, nauseous, confused. His body wasn't working right, but Judy kept encouraging him to take those vitamins. She said they'd make him feel better. So he kept taking them, and he kept getting sicker. But by 1983, Judy was getting impatient. The poison was taking too long. She'd already told people John was dying and he was still alive. She needed a faster solution, a more dramatic approach, and she decided to blow him up. One day, John Gentry walked out to his car in Pensacola. It was just another normal morning. He got in, put the key in the ignition, and turned it. The car exploded. The blast was massive. Metal and glass flew everywhere. John was thrown by the force of the explosion. He was severely injured. Burns, cuts, broken bones. But somehow, against all odds, John Gentry survived. And that survival changed everything. When police investigated the car bombing, they started asking questions. Who would want to kill John Gentry? They began looking into his life, his business, his relationships. And they started looking closely at his girlfriend, Judy. Something didn't add up. The investigators dug deeper into Judy's background. What they found was shocking. Multiple dead partners, multiple insurance claims, a trail of bodies stretching back over a decade. Then they found the vitamin pills Judy had been giving John. They sent them to a lab for testing. The results were chilling. The pills contained arsenic and paraformaldehyde. Judy had been poisoning John while at the same time planning to blow him up. She was using to-murder methods at once just to make sure he died. John Gentry had gotten incredibly lucky. He survived the poisoning. He survived the explosion, and his survival was about to bring down the Black Widow. The police started digging up bodies. First, they dug up Michael Goodyear, Judy's son. The tests came back positive: arsenic. Then James Goodyear, her first husband. Arsenic poisoning confirmed. Then Bobby Joe Morris, her boyfriend from Colorado. Arsenic poisoning confirmed. The pattern was undeniable. Every person close to Judy had died with arsenic in their system, and every death had been followed by a substantial insurance payout. Judy had turned murder into a profitable business, and she'd been running that business for 12 years. In 1983, police arrested Judy Buenoano on multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The bodies, the poison, the insurance policies, the survivor who could testify against her. The Black Widow's web was finally broken, and it all happened because one man refused to die. John Gentry had been victim number 4. But instead of becoming another name on Judy's kill list, he became the man who brought her to justice. Judy Buenoano sat in a courtroom facing her first trial. The evidence against her was stacked high: poison, insurance policies, and a survivor who could tell his story. The jury didn't take long. Judy was convicted of murdering her son, Michael. She was also convicted of the attempted murder of John Gentry. The judge handed down the sentences: 12 years for trying to kill Gentry and life in prison for killing Michael. Most people would think that's the end of the story. Life in prison means you die behind bars. But prosecutors weren't finished with Judy Buenoano. They wanted more. Judy was back in court for a second trial. This time, she was charged with murdering her first husband, James Goodyear. The body had been dug up. The tests confirmed arsenic poisoning. The insurance records showed the money trail. The jury found her guilty, but this time the sentence was different. The judge looked at Judy and sentenced her to death. Judy Buenoano became the first woman sentenced to death in Florida in the modern era. The state was sending a clear message. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Murder is murder, and justice is justice. But the convictions didn't stop there. Judy was also found guilty of multiple counts of grand theft through insurance fraud. Investigators suspected her of committing arson as well, burning down properties to collect insurance money. What they'd uncovered wasn't just a serial killer. It was a criminal enterprise built entirely on death and fraud. Then there were the other victims, the ones who would never get their day in court. Bobby Joe Morris had died back in Colorado in 1978. By the time Judy's trials were happening, she'd already been sentenced to death in Florida. Colorado looked at the case and decided not to pursue charges. Why spend the money on a trial when she was already going to be executed? The final tally was grim. At least 3 confirmed murders: James Goodyear, Michael Buenoano, and Bobby Joe Morris. 1 attempted murder, John Gentry, and possibly 2 or 3 more victims that could never be proven. All of it for insurance money. All of it for profit. After her sentencing, Judy was transferred to the Florida Department of Corrections. She was sent to Broward Correctional Institution, the death row facility for women. She would spend the next 13 years there, waiting for her execution date. During those years, Judy filed appeal after appeal. She claimed she was innocent. She claimed the trials were unfair. She claimed the evidence was wrong. Every appeal was reviewed. Every appeal was denied. The legal system moves slowly, especially in death penalty cases. Courts want to be absolutely certain before they execute someone. They review every detail, every piece of evidence, every legal argument. But in Judy's case, the evidence was overwhelming. The arsenic in the bodies, the insurance policies, the pattern of deaths, the testimony from John Gentry. There was no doubt about what she'd done. March 30th, 1998. After 13 years of appeals, Judy Buenoano had finally run out of options. Every court had reviewed her case. Every appeal had been denied. The Supreme Court refused to intervene. At age 54, Judy's execution date had arrived. Prison officials asked her what she wanted for her last meal. Her choice was interesting: Steamed broccoli, asparagus, strawberries, tomato wedges, and hot tea with lemon. All healthy foods, all natural, all pure. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a woman who had poisoned people with arsenic. And for her final meal, she chose the healthiest, most wholesome foods imaginable. Maybe she was trying to prove something. Maybe she just liked vegetables. Either way, it was a strange final request from a serial killer. As the hour approached, guards escorted Judy down the hallway toward the execution chamber at Florida State Prison. She was walking toward Old Sparky, Florida's electric chair. That chair had executed dozens of men over the decades. Now it was waiting for its first woman since 1848. This was a historic moment. Though not one anyone wanted to celebrate. Judy was about to become the first woman electrocuted in the United States. Since 1976, when the death penalty was brought back. Before the execution, officials gave Judy one final opportunity. They asked if she had any last words. Any apology to the families of James Goodyear, Michael Buenoano, or Bobby Joe Morris. Any explanation for why she'd done what she did? Any expression of remorse for drowning her own disabled son? Judy looked at them and said 2 words. No, sir. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no remorse, just defiance until the very end. She refused to give her victims' families even that small comfort. Guards strapped Judy into Old Sparky. The leather restraints held her in place. The metal cap was positioned on her head. Witnesses watched through the glass as the executioner prepared to throw the switch. Then it was over. Justice for James Goodyear, the Air Force sergeant who trusted his wife. Justice for Michael Buenoano, the son who loved his mother even as she killed him. Justice for Bobby Joe Morris, the boyfriend who never saw it coming. And justice for John Gentry, the man who barely escaped with his life. After her death, Judy's body was cremated. There's no grave where people can visit, no headstone with her name, no memorial. Just ashes scattered to the wind, as if she'd never existed at all. But her legacy remains. The Black Widow who killed for profit. A mother who murdered her own disabled son for insurance money. A woman who turned love into a death sentence. Florida's most notorious female serial killer. Judy Buenoano spent her life taking from others their money, their health, their lives. In the end, the state of Florida took the only thing she had left. Today, we remember the victims of Judy Buenoano. But questions still remain. How many others did Judy kill? What about the 1974 murder in Alabama? What about Gerald Dossett? Were there more victims? We'll never know about people who died and were buried before anyone suspected the truth. We'll probably never know the full extent of Judy's crimes. But we know this. The Black Widow's web was finally destroyed. Justice was served 27 years after her first murder. Judy Buenoano's story is a dark reminder that some people see others as nothing more than dollar signs. That love and trust can be weaponized by those without conscience. But it's also a reminder that eventually the truth comes out. Evil doesn't win forever. If this story impacted you, please like this video and share it with others. Subscribe for more true crime stories that need to be told.